Welcome to Flock, a community of business leaders to help collaborate and share insights and expertise from across the industry. Today I'm joined by 4 of my colleagues from the industry who are going to share their insights with regards to events for 2022 and beyond, and just how COVID has potentially shaped those going forward. We've had a number of questions in from clients and certainly from the LinkedIn post that we had as well, very much around the futurescaping and a return to real time. So first question, I'm going to go with Stuart, if that's okay. So the first one that came in was, technology is probably the biggest impact on the events industry of the last year. In the wider business world, there is a call to go back to the office and meet, bounce ideas and interact. Do you see us moving away from WebEx and back to face-to-face?
Thank you, Steph. Yeah, very good question. I think as the road out of lockdown is becoming a little bit more obvious now, and hopefully without any more blips, we can see the reactions, and we're talking to clients and talking to colleagues, and the views are very mixed, to be honest. A lot of people are embracing it. A lot of people are really not embracing it and not enjoying it, but it's kind of been forced upon us to a certain extent. By our very nature, we're social creatures, so I think we crave interaction with people. So I think that we will see in the short to mid-term a kind of flood of events coming back in person, face-to-face. This is the impression we're getting. Mm-hmm. But longer term, I think people are recognising the benefits of online collaboration. And it's worth pointing out here that online events and virtual events, it's not new to the industry. Just because COVID's come along, we were kind of producing events online with an online element prior to COVID, but the technology has kind of advanced. So I think we've been forced to use and embrace it very much. But I think certain industries will certainly want to get back to face-to-face meetings, but then use the online and the technology sort of moving forward.
Anybody else want to jump in there? Are you finding the same in terms of the face-to-face?
Yeah, the only thing I'll add to that is that I think everybody's expectation of events now and next year is that they have to be better than they ever were before. So face-to-face, as Stuart said, we're very sociable species, humans. We much prefer to be with other people than be sat in our living rooms in front of a laptop. But in order, for it to be a great event, there's got to be great content. So yes, we're all looking forward to face-to-face, but in order for me to accept an invite to a face-to-face, it's got to be worth me going there. Mm.
Pressure's on.
I just need a glass of wine. I mean, on the technology side, I'd just say it's been a bridge to communications through the pandemic, but it'll probably play a part in terms of just being a constant communication means, and an event will be an element of it, and it'll still be very special. But rather than it just be a standalone thing that just happens and it's got a beginning and a middle and an end, the digital side will make sure that messaging kind of continues far longer than the event would. So I think that's where it probably will go. Mm-hmm.
I do wonder about the tech in terms of we've all dealt with everything that's gone on over the last year and almost embraced tech because we've had to. But actually tech's going to take us to a new place which we're not sure where it's going to. And almost now, in the years to come, up to 2022, we're actually going to see how it evolves and kind of the future, whatever it may lay.
I think the great benefit of it is the fact that people are becoming a lot more confident with technology, where events previously, you would find that some event managers and some companies would steer clear of it. They're confident in technology now, so that I think going forward they're going to incorporate it more and more into their events.
And the only thing I'll add is that we've already had some anecdotal evidence from clients, particularly tech clients, and it follows on to what Chetan was just saying, that events become a part of a campaign, whereas events previously were one-off standalone things. An event now is part of a campaign that starts with an invite and finishes with sort of social media follow-up, etc. And an event becomes a part of a campaign rather than a one-off thing.
So I think we'll touch upon this a bit later, but it certainly sounds marketing and events teams are going to be working more closer than ever, and I'm certainly thinking from a venue perspective the pressure's on for us to help deliver as well. So I'm sure we'll touch upon that a little bit later. Staying on kind of the tech side, Nick, this one's for you. If we can reach more people through tech, will corporate procurement departments start to question overseas travel? Quite timely.
Very timely, as we wait for the corridors. But I think, from my perspective, actually the question around it is not necessarily to do with cost or travel, but actually to do with the world we're in now. Over the last year, we've seen everyone question purpose and question what they're doing, both as individuals, as a company, in terms of for society as a whole and the world as a whole. And I think the challenge for international travel is going to be around companies being pressured around their carbon footprint and carbon neutrality, and them delivering to their promises or their visions or their statements of what they would want to be as companies. So I think there's going to be that pressure alongside the cost pressure which procurement is going to lay on, and I think international travel for events is something that will come back, but you've got to understand why you are doing it, and it will take longer than kind of us just thinking that we're just going to jump on a plane because we've got an event to go to.
Actually, I was talking to my partner this morning. We've just completed a venue find for a global partners conference for 600 people, and it was whittled down to 4 venues: Singapore, Istanbul, Athens, and Paris. And yesterday and today, each of those hotels were given 75 minutes to produce a presentation for the client working from home, to walk them around the hotel, show them where the main plenary, where the breakouts, where the functions were going to take place. And at the end of it, the client said the presentations were off the charts good. We really got a sense of, which hotel we think we're going to have the event at, but all of them should be thanked and congratulated for going to an enormous effort, to really give us an idea. And we've saved so much money and time. In the process, we've probably saved £10,000 from not having to fly to 2 people or 3 people to those venues for a site inspection. It all happened that much quicker, and it used up less of the hotel's time as well. And I think brands and companies may do that a little bit more, particularly for global events, and then maybe just choose the hotel that they think works best, and then maybe get on a plane and go to that one and reduce their carbon footprint by 75% in the process.
I think there's also the benefit of there's certain presenters who are much more comfortable in front of an audience. Even this morning I had a conversation with somebody who says, I don't like pre-recorded stuff, don't like to be online, it's very out of my comfort zone. So I think, and also there's obviously the benefit for some who engage with the technology, who think, I can actually be presenting at an event 10 minutes walk from, or 2 minutes walk from my kitchen. And I don't have to get on a plane, don't have to spend 8 hours or however long the flight is, that time out of the office, etc. And obviously the environmental benefits as well. So I think there's many benefits.
I think we're having a lot of conversations about the concept of the hybrid event, where you might have a smaller audience physically and then a larger audience virtual. Our main concern, kind of going back to the point around the presenters, to talk to people in a room and talk to people virtually is actually 2 different skill sets. You might be delivering the same message, but how you're delivering it is going to be different. I think, it's kind of from my perspective, presenter speakers need to be thinking about how they're going to do this. Because very much, going back to the carbon footprint, going back to the venues, that is an obvious next interim step, the concept of the hybrid, where you have an event and you have a venue, but you have it for people in a localised region. And for the international stuff, that's going to come over time.
Has anybody got anything to add?
I'll just echo what the chaps have said, but there's a whole wave of events that would absolutely go. There would be no reason to fly or meet in person, like board meetings where they're getting together. They can actually just do that online, and it probably will serve the purpose and save a whole lot of time and carbon footprint. But then there's other events where you have to be in person, face to face, wherever that is in the world. I mean, and we'll come on to that.
Thank you. I think we've certainly learnt that from our point of view for board meetings and things, and I think we'll be taking that forward as well. So next question is quite interesting. I'm going to point this one at you, Chetan. We've been very used to Netflix and on-demand TV. I'll hold my hands up to that one. Equally, we've become used to working from home and communicating and learning from afar. Will we see greater use of on-demand learning and development programmes, or will there be a return to classroom-style learning?
Well, in terms of learning, let's take that as any sort of communication, education, product messaging. Yeah, of course, there is certain elements that can be done online still, and there will be a place for them. But let's be clear, how much are you taking in on certain communications when you're just online? I mean, I know what I've done over the past year. Yeah, I've been doing a lot of online, but am I absolutely engaged? Am I really getting the message? Am I distracted with my phone pinging or emails coming through or the Amazon delivery man coming to the door? How much am I actually absorbing? So people learn differently, and there's nothing like the impact of live events cannot be substituted. That messaging, that stickiness, that holding things in your hands for, say, products so yes, there's certain elements, again, that can be done online, but there's nothing that can replace the live event, the concentration, the effectiveness of being in a room together, being at a physical space, using all 5 senses to get a message across. You can't beat it. So I feel like we've used it to get to a point where we couldn't meet, but there's certain things where you have to just be back together.
No, I completely agree. Again, has anybody got anything else to add from that point? I mean, I've certainly felt the same.
Sorry, Karen.
I think the kind of it's very much back to the conversation around AI, which we've been hearing a lot kind of over the years prior to the pandemic about how we're all going to be losing our jobs because of AI is going to automate everything. And actually the whole thing is there is a place, and there is a place for online learning which is enormously helpful, and we've seen it over the years, and actually that will continue. But actually there are other things where being in a room together and learning from other people and interacting with other people, that can't be replicated. And understanding how best to deliver through different mediums is what we need to address and what we need to understand in order to get the best out of any sort of training or learning.
So I think it goes back to that kind of phrase of blended learning, isn't there? It's just making sure that, like you say, it's not a one-size-fits-all, I think, going forward.
On the flip side of that, what we've also seen with a number of events who would traditionally have 100 people, say, for example, in person, they've tripled or quadrupled their audience by taking it online. That's what Chetan says, how many of those are fully engaged. You'd have to quantify the evidence and have a look at the data on that side of things. So there are benefits in taking learning online and things, but in terms of increasing your audience and your reach, but it's then quantifying the quality of that as well.
I think some of the learning that's happened over the last year, I think pre-COVID, a lot of learning was to give you the skills to do your job better. Whereas actually a lot of the learning that companies have been offering to their employees over the last 12 months has been, learning how to adapt to this hideous COVID world that we've been living in, for the last 12 months. And I hope that continues, because we're not going to return back to working in an office 5 days a week, commuting, up to a big busy city, maybe, in a generation possibly. So learning to adapt to the new norm and knowing what your employer finds normal or not normal is something that's going to have to continue for a while yet.
No, I completely agree. And I think the next question that kind of came in is actually quite closely linked in terms of a one-size-fits-all. So one of the questions that came in through LinkedIn was, do you see age now affecting how events take place? For example, Gen Z are driven by digital and immediacy. So what's happening with more senior teams within organisations? So I think that's quite a really interesting question. So I'm just trying to think where to start here, whether Stuart or Nick. Nick's looking at me with a big grin. I think he's eager. So
No, please.
From a production point of view,
Yeah.
In all honesty, we're typically not seeing age as a factor to a certain extent, because we've been forced to use the technology in the short term for now. But what we are seeing is, with the younger generation, it's pre-recording content for future events. It's fairly straightforward. With a slightly older generation and senior members, they need a bit more guidance and a bit more help. Only yesterday, for example, we're recording 7 presenters for a medical conference in 2 weeks' time. 3 of them, it was just appalling because their technology fell over. One of them forgot to plug their laptop in. One of them couldn't get online because of certain things. We can control as much at this end as possible, but it's kind of the education process for externally that we can't really control some of the times, and we are finding it's the slightly older generation who are needing a bit more guidance in that sense. So yeah, I mean, that's where we are.
Are you guys finding the same?
I just like to, I mean, clearly there's a split between kind of the digital natives and those of us who are slightly older who had to embrace technology through our lives. And when you are planning an event, you have to make sure you are planning it for everyone and giving everyone the time and understanding of they themselves are brands. And so if they are speaking, whether it's at a meeting, whether it's at a big event or anything like that, how they represent themselves and how they deliver, they need to be set up correctly. So to get outside help and actually to be relying on kind of younger people who are more attuned to it is something that the older generation just need to embrace and not shy away from. And I think therefore kind of you should turn it into a positive thing, and actually it could bring together these two different generations as almost reverse mentorship or whatever you want to look at it as.
I quite like that approach.
There is a challenge which this new world might bring. So we run a leaders group, and Dina Green from Orange Door raised this as a really interesting point. When events come back, they're not going to come back full-fold. So the whole company go off for a conference, and her example was the person who's just started 2 weeks in is sat next to or stood next to the CEO, and they end up having this random conversation, which is what used to happen. So everyone would go to events, and you could meet, whether you're young or old, or how long have you been at the company, you'd have this opportunity to meet and engage and be inspired by everyone through the company. When the events come back, they're probably going to be smaller, more selective. So who gets to go? Who gets to go to the virtual or the hybrid element, and who gets to go to the live element? And there could be this disparity where actually the senior, the older, the more higher up people get to go, because that probably is the way it works. And the junior people, the new starters, probably won't get to go. And that's a potentially huge challenge of just getting people integrated into organizations, learning from each other. So there's a challenge that agencies now probably have to work with clients about who gets to go to the live event. And that's an interesting one. Not the digital natives, yes, they're going to be faster at all the digital stuff, but yeah, there's a missing piece there that needs to be solved.
So I wouldn't want that responsibility, but
No.
it's one we've got to face.
Yeah, only thing I'll add is that, I think Gen Z have, they like their content in very small, short doses. They'll go onto YouTube, watch a video for 5 or 10 minutes, then they'll disappear, and then they'll go to Instagram and watch a reel for 5 or 10 seconds, and they'll get the information that they want from that, and then they'll go on with the next part of their day. So somebody mentioned a medical conference, earlier. I've been involved in some medical conferences which take 3 or 4 days, for these medical conferences to take place. If your target audience is of a certain age, sort of the younger age bracket, I just can't see how an event organizer is going to keep a 20-year-old or a 25-year-old engaged for that length of time. And I think that's a challenge for the industry.
I think staying with you, Alex, I think this kind of ties in quite nicely as well, and a few of you have touched upon the types of events that you're experiencing and getting involved with. So I think one of the questions that came in as well was around kind of the overriding themes that organisers want to look at for their events. So things like kicking back company culture, is it time to make up for lost revenue? So again, the heavy push on sales teams and reward and recognition. Alex, I mean, starting with you, are you seeing a different change in themes or?
Yeah, I think if you took a poll of, FTSE 100, they've probably spent more time and money on company culture and well-being than they have done in the last 10 years, added up. And there's been a real need for it. And I think most companies, they have two important audiences. You've got your staff and you've got your clients. And we've all found out over the course of the last 13 months or so just how important they both are. So if you take clients first, you've got to treat them like royalty. You've got to be grateful for their business. But there's a fantastic opportunity to ask for referrals and networking, which has been significant in opening up new channels. But from a staff point of view, well-being has been brilliant virtually. It's so easy to organise a virtual wine tasting or escape room or a painting class, or whatever it is. And I don't think big companies can just abandon that investment, into their staff, because staff have been grateful for it to help them cope with, a very tricky period of being an employee. And as people start going back to the office, to reduce that back to the minimum amount, I personally think would be a mistake. I think one big trend is that employee well-being is something so many members of staff have had their job titles changed from HR director to head of culture or culture ambassador or head of fun, even. So are you going to change that person's role back to HR manager or head of HR, in January 2022 because it's all gone? Or actually are your staff so grateful that they've had somebody in charge of making sure, would that be a terrible decision?
I think that's the thing with a lot of these themes we're talking about. There's a danger to go backwards. I think we were talking about it earlier, actually, over coffee. We don't want to look back. We want to look forward. So,
I think kind of, okay, there's been devastation in different sectors and there's been massive problems. But the truth of the matter is, as a world, we switched very well to a virtual environment and remote working and everything things. And we should take a moment and pat ourselves on the back for that. And then turn around and say, this return to the office, none of us really know what it's going to look like. This return to this new environment, the concept of return is something that I'm not even convinced by at all. We don't know what it's going to look like. So you can't be taking your event and saying, okay, now we're going to shift from kind of, we've been talking about wellness kind of and health and everything, and now we're going to go back to be talking about the sales, now we're going to increase our sales. That's not, because you don't know what it's going to be like. So therefore you've got to stay fluid and you've got to be open to your employees and open to your clients and actually be receptive to what they want to hear and be able to react to the moment, which is an interesting concept when you're talking about live physical events, about lead times and actually how you put in place what you will be talking about in a world where who knows what's going to happen tomorrow, let alone in 6 months' time.
And you've got, with a lot of organisations, potentially 2 or more different types of people. The ones that have been working their butts off during this period and trying to keep the lights on and pivoting and learning new skills. And you've got people on furlough who've been doing whatever they've been doing, volunteering or whatever, and now they're trying to integrate that group of people back to another group of people. That's a massive challenge. So in terms of events and trying to get that culture and identity and getting people back into the work mode, but sensitive, very sensitive to both the challenges that both groups faced or more, several other scenarios as well. That's going to be a big thing for many organisations, and that's, events are going to be quite led to getting those teams back in and working quite smoothly.
I was going to say, Chetan, you were talking about the working from home side of things and well-being. This might actually go quite nicely onto the next question, and I think it affects all of us regardless of what industry you're in. Working from home has had a dramatic effect on everyone. Does remote working make events more important? And I think we've kind of all agreed that it's a big yes. Or is the potential that procurement, again, see a trend in potential cost savings? I mean, I think we touched upon it a little bit, but it'd be good to get your thoughts.
Yeah, of course, procurement can look at it as a cost saving, and it's not a necessity. They're going to question every single event, and they probably should have always been questioning every single event. But a lot of events have just happened, and there hasn't been that scrutiny. Now there is scrutiny on why events take place, whether it's, what's the ROI, why are we doing it, who's involved. All of those questions are going to have another barrier of safety and environment and all of those things. And if it passes those tests, I think events will be back stronger, better budgets, better ROI, greater audiences because of hybrid. All of that stuff will come back, and we'll have a very healthy, a far better events industry than we probably ever had. But you kind of, if you look at the kind of procurement role, they're going to have quite a challenge to kind of dissect all of that information and decide what should happen. But yeah, I think events will come back stronger than they have previously. And because people are working from home so much, they're going to save a huge amount of probably time and money on office space, but actually they're going to need to get their teams back together more often than they probably ever have. So events is going to be one of those ways where they talk strategy, sales strategy, culture strategy. Events are going to possibly grow, but time will only tell.
Hopefully that's...
Hybrid events are going to be more expensive than live events because you have to deliver an event live and you have to deliver it virtually for people that don't want to fly in or travel or risk or whatever it is. So if procurement reduce their budget, that would, in my opinion, be a mistake, because actually I think it would be better, if you haven't got more budget, it would be better to do fewer events but spend more money on them to make them better than drive the price of an event down and try and cut some budget.
So Stuart, you're nodding your head there, and I'm...
No, I totally agree. I mean,
Yeah.
I think there's going to be a trade-off between the cost for people to fly to these events and to go to these events and the cost of the production of the additional hybrid element. I don't know whether, budgets will very much, like you say, remain very similar, I think.
So just moving on to the next question. Nick, it'd be good to get your thoughts on this one, actually. Do you think we'll see the objective of an event influencing its format more than it has done in the past? And again, I think we've touched upon this again. For content-driven programmes where the return on investment is focused on reach and education for virtual format, proving its worth. But for events where networking and closing a deal are key, will we see a return to the typical face-to-face format?
I love that question. I think kind of in the event industry for years we got complacent and we never asked our clients a critical question, which is, what do you define as success of this event? And almost our clients never actually thought about that. And if they start thinking about what they hope to achieve out of the event in the first place, then we can put in place the right medium for them to achieve that. Because the truth is, kind of the virtual delivers something different to the physical. And the same way that if I'm having a conversation with you, I'm making a choice whether to send you an email or to pick up the phone and call you on the phone, or to have a face-to-face meeting in order for me to achieve my objective. That's the position we are in the events industry. It's, what do I hope to achieve from this event? How best can I achieve that? Because I can put on the virtual event overnight if it's something I need to react to. I can reach a mass populace immediately overnight. It's limited cost to the whole thing. But actually, if it is about being in a room with people, getting to know people, I can't replicate that currently online. And therefore I have to do it through a physical environment. So I think that question, asking yourself at the beginning, with the events industry asking their clients, what are you determining as success to this? Then we can go on to say how we can achieve that, rather than starting in the place of what the event looks like.
And I think actually coming from a venue perspective, we've got the responsibility to ask that question as well, beyond kind of providing bricks and mortar and food and beverage. I think we've got that responsibility to support you in achieving those objectives as well. Any other comments on that one?
I would just say that once you've answered that question, the next question is, who do I want to come?
Yeah.
Because I think the audience will change. So if you're going to invite someone to, if it's an external event, perhaps inviting clients to join live, but prospects to join virtually might become a trend. Because if you can't have 300 people at an event for whatever the reason is, you would probably want your best clients there and prospects joining in virtually or something like that. So finding out who the audience is important.
And then taking that a stage further, you've then got a huge opportunity to almost create a culture of the fear of missing out. So those prospects then become a lot more hot and obviously want to be involved more with that event. So you can kind of work off that.
I'd say it ties in quite nicely with the next question, and maybe Alex and Chetan. With obviously kind of the hybrid events, how do you attract people to attend physically? Because I guess we've all got used to the comfort of our own homes going, do you know what, I'll dial in. How do you get people there?
Yeah, I'll go first. I feel very passionately about this. I think to get people to say yes to your event is going to be way harder. So the invite process, is critical. Just sending an email saying, will you come to my webinar, or, team building event won't cut the mustard. So we've already started, creating sort of registration websites with animation, interaction, already getting people to leave their comments about what they want to get out of the event, so you can start building programs around what the clients or the attendees want. I think in order to get people to attend, sending them something physical. We've all loved having a knock on the door and something being delivered, and you've interacted well, with that. And then I think if you are going to attend an event, there's got to be some content that you get live that you wouldn't get virtually.
Yeah.
So the opportunity to sit down, meet the speaker, have a fireside or whatever it is for half an hour, that will become something that's popular too.
I don't know. I kind of feel like just getting an invite does cut the mustard in the short term, like it could, because, okay, maybe it's me, I'll go to an opening of an envelope, but you never know what's going to happen, and that is the beauty of the event. Yes, you've got your structured content, you know what you're doing, you're going to eat, meet people, listen to some stuff, whatever, but you never quite know where that chance serendipitous conversation could take you, and that is still going to be true no matter what. So I do agree that there should be some exclusive content, or we need to concentrate a little bit about what you're going to get if you get there, if you go live, rather than, oh, I could just log on and not have to do that commute. You do have to overcome it a little bit, but I think events on their own, because of what you get and all of the senses get, stimulated, and the chance conversations, I think that can stand up on its own, but time will tell.
Yeah, how long will that last?
I think kind of it's really interesting in terms of when the person who invites the person to the event, they also need to help out the person who wants to attend, in the sense of they probably have to kind of justify it to their boss. They also probably have to justify it to their partner or whoever it was, in terms of it's going to be COVID friendly and everything's going to be good. So by helping them, making sure they can tick all the boxes, it almost gives them the license to turn up at the event. So it's not kind of, why don't you come to the event, it's going to be great for you. It's, why don't you come to the event, it's going to be great for you, and this is how it's going to help your company. And we are COVID friendly, and we have got a lot of fresh air, and we have got all the other stuff. So it's almost, you're giving no reason to say no. So it's going beyond just, here's an invite and it's going to be great, to there's no reason for you to say no.
And in addition to those sort of things, it's also, Flock is an amazing example where you've created a community feel, so that people actually feel there's high value networking opportunities, and feel that, there's a massive benefit in that sense. So it's worthwhile making that journey.
I think what you touched upon as well, and it leads in one of the questions that we had around experiences, experiential. What do we think in terms of what is the future around experiential? What does that look like in the future? Certainly from face-to-face and marketing and all of that kind of stuff. Nick, I'm looking to you.
We want to experience stuff. We want things which are unique. We want things which are different. We want things where we can share together. Kind of, we talk about communities, and the reason we have communities and we bond together is because we have joint experiences. So anything you can give to people, whether it is virtual, whether it is physical, which binds them together, which means they have something, hopefully, kind of as we return and we all go to the pub and we sit down and we've got stories to tell. Give us those stories, feed it to us, and suddenly we've got things which relate to each other, and we form bonds which can't be replicated in any other way.
I mean, one of the interesting themes that have come through as well, and it'd be good to get your take on this as well, Chetan, we're finding, like with Christmas parties, we're finding potentially there's a bit of a shift to summer. Do you think that will continue to rise because of people's, I don't know, outside, fresh air, all of that kind of good stuff?
I'm going to really sit on the fence with this answer, so apologies in advance.
You're allowed.
And it'd be interesting to see what actually does happen. So on the negative, winter, more COVID cases, uncertainty means potentially people aren't going to make decisions, and the Christmas season won't happen as big as it should, because it's the first winter we're going to have even after vaccinations. So a lot of uncertainty, possibly a lot of last minute bookings, but it may not go the way that lots of people want it to go in terms of live events over that period and celebrations. And on the flip side, on the positive side, it could be one of the bumper Christmases of all time. We haven't done anything for so long. It's going to be after everyone's got double vaccinated, cases are low, and it's the first time we've really got to celebrate. In reality, what I think is going to happen I think there's going to be choice. There's going to be Christmas parties. They might be smaller, they might be more regional, not the big gatherings. But also there's going to be choice possibly to say, but if you don't want to come, have an experience just yourself, or a voucher, or dinner for two instead. I think organisations are going to have to look at choice and giving, because people are going to have different risk appetite about going out, being with lots of people. So yeah, it's a bit of a sit on the fence answer that I don't really know which way it could go, but it could be bumper because it's the first time we can celebrate. Even this summer, whilst we can go out, there's still such a short lead time to lots of summer events that actually Christmas could be really good timing.
We're planning for a bumper Christmas.
Yes.
Absolutely bumper Christmas. However, I think there are going to be 3 types of Christmas event. There will be some live, and only time will tell whether that's 1,000 people, 100 people, or 50 people, but there will definitely be some live. There will be some virtual, because we know dozens of clients that aren't going to do any live events this year, but they've still got to say thank you. And then there's a third type of Christmas event, which is kind of like a digital, and you touched on it, saying, well, normally we would like to, meet up in States, but we're not able to this year. So here's a voucher for the equivalent amount, 150 quid, and go and spend it on Amazon or Majestic or Waitrose or Audible or whatever it is. So I think companies have to say thank you to their staff and to their clients, perhaps, at the end of the year, but it's still too far out to determine exactly whether it's going to be live, virtual or digital.
Can I just add one thing about the summer party for this year, which I think kind of, if it's rephrased to be kind of for those companies that are doing a return to the office type environment, then I'm saying in this summer that we're going to see this rise of actually this kind of, we want to bring people back together. They're coming back together. We need that almost kick-off meeting, which can be a summer party because none of us had that Christmas party together. Which kind of sort of summer, hopefully it'll be summer and winter.
Yeah, hopefully we can have it all. One more question, if that's okay. And Alex, I think I'll come to you first. Do you see a full return to corporate hospitality? Obviously, we're hearing a lot coming through at the moment, or do you think there will be massive changes in this area?
I think I speak on behalf of all of us to say, to be at Stamford Bridge, Lords, Twickenham, the O2, Wembley Stadium, and for the hairs on the back of my neck to stand up on end, I cannot wait for that to happen. I do believe next year corporate hospitality will be very popular. However, I think there will be some trends of smaller groups. I think will be a more likely scenario, and private facilities I think will also be incredibly popular because you're able to really tailor the number of people that your guests come into contact with. But I just think that we've all had this absence of listening to fake crowd noise and watching stuff on TV or a laptop, the ability to go and see something, even if it costs a bit of money. We can't go on holiday, so you've got to spend your money on something.
I mean, as a season ticket holder at a very successful West London football club,
some might say,
the missing out on going every week to not just watch the football, but for the social aspect, it's heartbreaking really to be almost sitting through a game and texting people while it's happening because you can't be there live. It's heartbreaking.
Fingers crossed, not long. Like you say, I think it's the hairs on the back of the neck that we're all kind of missing, aren't we? So. I think that's kind of everything we've had in. Thank you so much. The answer's been amazing. I've certainly walked away with a number of things that we've got to crack on with from a venue perspective. But no, thank you for being a part of Flock. Really, really grateful. And hopefully a lot of people will get a lot out of today. So thank you very much.
Thank you.